Representatives of China, Russia, and Iran called for an end to U.S. sanctions on Iran and advocated for the restart of multinational talks on the issue. The three countries emphasized the necessity of terminating all unlawful unilateral sanctions. China's Vice Foreign Minister Ma Zhaoshu read from a joint statement, flanked by Russia's Deputy Foreign Minister Ryabkov Sergei Alexeyevich and Iran's Deputy Foreign Minister Kazem Garibabadi. U.S. President Trump in his first term unilaterally withdrew from the Iran nuclear deal and imposed strict sanctions on Iran since it was believed that Iran was exploiting the deal and pursuing nuclear weapon development. The agreement had offered Iran relief from sanctions in exchange for limitations on its nuclear program. President Biden had pledged to restore the Iran nuclear deal, but it didn't work out. Donald Trump has recently dispatched an official letter to Iran's leaders, suggesting direct talks regarding Tehran's nuclear program. In a major boost to the Indian Navy, India and France have concluded negotiations for the procurement of 26 Rafale M fighter jets in a deal worth approximately $7.6 billion. The formal agreement is expected to be signed in April 2025 during a visit to India by the French Minister of Defense, Sébastien Lecornu. The agreement includes 22 single-seat fighters and 4 twin-seater trainers, along with weapons, simulators, spare parts, and crew training. Under the contract, Dassault Aviation will deliver the first aircraft within 37 months of signing, with modifications tailored for Indian aircraft carriers. The fighters will be operated from the decks of India's second and only fully indigenous aircraft carrier, INS Vikrant. Rafale M prevailed over American FA-18 in trials. Before we proceed to next, a word on NordVPN, which is one of the most trusted and fastest VPN brand that has a no-log policy validated by Deloitte. NordVPN provides a 256-bit encrypted tunnel that protects your privacy and also enables you to access contents that are blocked based on geolocation. Its threat protection system helps you avoid phishing, scams, and malware. NordVPN application is available for all the major platforms as well as browsers. Get an exclusive NordVPN deal with massive saving by going to nordvpn.com/defense or clicking the link in the description. It's risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. Polish President Andrzej Duda has called on the United States to station nuclear warheads in Poland, asserting that NATO's eastern expansion should be accompanied by corresponding infrastructure changes. In a March 12th interview with the Financial Times, Duda remarked, "The borders of NATO moved east in 1999, so 26 years later, there should also be a shift of the NATO infrastructure east. For me, this is obvious." He stressed that deploying U.S. nuclear weapons in Poland would be both timely and beneficial for enhancing security across the NATO alliance. Duda also revealed that he had previously discussed this proposal with Keith Kellogg, then U.S. President Donald Trump's special envoy for Ukraine. Duda had earlier presented a similar request to then U.S. President Joe Biden in 2022, though it did not come to fruition. Meanwhile, Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk has recently engaged in talks with France about extending France's nuclear deterrent to support European allies. In a notable geopolitical move, President Donald Trump has reportedly instructed the U.S. military to develop plans for expanding its presence in Panama to secure control over the Panama Canal. As reported by Reuters, the Pentagon has been tasked with assessing military strategies to maintain U.S. access to the vital waterway. This development comes after Trump repeatedly voiced intentions to take back control of the canal from Panama, citing concerns about national security and China's growing influence in the region. Although no official military action has been confirmed, reports suggest that a confidential national security document under Trump's administration advocates for protecting the canal. Additionally, The Sun reported that Trump has directly ordered the military to explore options for reclaiming the crucial trade route. The Panama Canal, constructed by the U.S. in the early 20th century, was officially handed over to Panama in 1999 under the Torrijos-Carter Treaties. Defense Minister Bill Blair has said that Canada is actively looking at potential alternatives to the US-built F-35 stealth fighter and will hold conversations with rival aircraft makers. This assertion came just hours after he was reappointed to the post as part of Prime Minister Mark Carney's new cabinet. This comes against the backdrop of a contentious political battle with the Trump administration over tariffs. The tensions began with President Donald Trump's imposition of tariffs on Canadian steel, aluminum, and crude oil imports. In 2022, Canada announced its decision to purchase 88 Lockheed Martin F-35 fighter jets to replace its aging fleet of CF-18 Hornets. The deal, valued at approximately $19 billion, marked one of the largest defense procurements in Canadian history. The first deliveries are expected around 2026, with full operational capability targeted for the early 2030. The remarks came one day after Portugal signaled it was planning to ditch its acquisition of the high-tech warplane. Russian President Vladimir Putin has stated that he would spare the lives of Ukrainian soldiers in the Kursk region if they surrender, following an appeal from Donald Trump to avoid a horrible massacre in the area. Putin emphasized that the safety of these troops would be ensured under international law, provided they lay down their arms. U.S. President Donald Trump announced on March 14th that his administration held productive discussions with Russian President Vladimir Putin. In a Truth Social post, Trump wrote that he urged Putin to spare thousands of Ukrainian troops who he says are currently completely surrounded by Russian forces and in a very bad and vulnerable position. Russian President Vladimir Putin has earlier announced that Ukrainian soldiers captured in the region will be treated as terrorists, denying them protections under the Geneva Conventions. He also stated that foreign mercenaries fighting for Ukraine will not be considered prisoners of war under international law. Germany has formally confirmed its order for 120 Patriot PAC-3 missile segment enhancement MSE guided missiles from Lockheed Martin. The contract was valued at 763.5 million euros. The German Bundestag's Budget Committee approved the deal on December 18, 2024, and the purchase is being facilitated through the U.S. Foreign Military Sales Program. This acquisition is part of Germany's ongoing initiative to strengthen its air defense capabilities in response to growing security threats. The Patriot system was introduced with the MIM-104A interceptor. Progressively upgraded missiles were added like MIM-104B, known as PAC-1, and MIM-104C, designated as PAC-2. PAC-3 MSE is the latest one. For general aerial targets, like aircraft and drones, the missile has an engagement range of 120 kilometers or 75 miles, whereas for ballistic targets, it has a range of about 60 kilometers or around 37 miles. In a significant enhancement to its Air Force capabilities, the Algerian Air Force has started deploying Russian-made Su-35 fighter jets at Mbouagi Air Base. This development makes Algeria the third foreign nation to operate Su-35, joining China and Iran. The fighter jets were initially produced under a 2018 contract with Egypt. However, Cairo later canceled the order due to economic challenges and political pressure, especially concerns about U.S. sanctions under the COTS legislation. The Sukhoi Su-35 Superflanker is a highly advanced fighter aircraft that has evolved from the Su-27M. During the development of India's Su-30 Mki, Sukhoi refined the capabilities of the Su-35, making it a single-seat, twin-engine, highly maneuverable, and 4.5-generation air superiority fighter. Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko has announced that his country is preparing to incorporate Russia's powerful Oreshnik hypersonic missile system into its military arsenal. During his address on March 13th, Lukashenko stated that Belarus is currently producing launch vehicles for this advanced weapon, with completion anticipated by the year's end. He noted, however, that no Oreshnik missile have been delivered to Belarus yet. The deployment schedule will be determined once the required infrastructure is in place. Oreshnik was first used on 23 November by the Russian military to attack a factory in Dnipro in Ukraine. The weapon has a speed exceeding Mach 10 and is equipped with 6 warheads, each with 6 submunitions. The United States has conducted extensive airstrikes against Iran-backed Houthi rebels in Yemen's capital, Sana'a, in response to their ongoing attacks on Red Sea shipping lanes. According to Reuters, the strikes, authorized by President Donald Trump, targeted Houthi-controlled radar systems, air defenses, and missile launch sites. The U.S. operation aims to restore freedom of navigation and eliminate Houthi threats in the region. Recently, HOUTHIS announced the resumption of strikes on Israeli ships in the Arabian Sea and the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, and stated that the attacks will continue until Israel reopens humanitarian corridors to the besieged region of Gaza. The Houthi movement, colloquially, simply Houthis, is an Islamist political and armed organization that emerged from the Yemeni governorate of Sada in the 1990s. The Houthis have targeted over 100 merchant vessels with missiles and drones since the Israel-Hamas war in the Gaza Strip started in October 2023.